This is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from this week in tech. Coming up, big tech reports results. Apple says iPhone sales were stabilizing, and its bet on services seems to be paying off. Plus, Alphabet falls the most in 7 years after first quarter revenue missed analyst estimates, sparking fears that advertisers are shifting spending to Google's rivals. And Facebook puts its best foot forward at its F8 Developers Conference as the social network works to pivot to more private communication. We're going to hear from the vice president of Facebook Messenger. But first, to our top story. Apple reports earnings results with services revenue hitting a high of $11.5 billion. This after unveiling a plethora of new services, including streaming video games, and a revamped new subscription service. Still, though, its biggest revenue driver remains the iPhone, where demand has stabilized. The iPhone bringing in $31 billion after a disappointing holiday quarter. Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde caught up with IDC's VP of Worldwide Device Trackers, Ryan Reith, and Forrester Principal Analyst Julie Osk on Tuesday after the results.
Overall, it's definitely not pretty, and I think that we've got some tough times ahead, to be honest. I think we're looking at basically 2020 as sort of the beginning of the real recovery for the overall market, and that's pretty much around all of the device markets that Apple plays in, as well as obviously their services business, which is sort of growing to the center of attention pretty quickly beyond iPhone and other things.
Beyond iPhone and other things, and beyond is where they potentially could put some cash to work. Julie, we talked about its cash pile previously. We're getting clarity on the call coming from Luca Maestri, who is the CFO, saying that Apple had $225 billion in cash in the end of the quarter, net cash of $115 billion. They can invest confidently. Where would you want them to invest confidently?
Oh, that's a very hard question. If I knew the answer to that, I'd have a very senior position at Apple. But no, more seriously, I think, what's hard here is you can't just throw money at the challenges ahead of them. There isn't that next it device. They can spend money on marketing to drive demand and to support developers to create more services to try to get to that next it device. But like I said, it's also hard in the services market because they're so dependent on ecosystem partners. So the growth there, while it's very scalable, it's also very hard won.
Now, Ryan, talking of it devices, a sort of stealth it device to a certain degree has been the AirPods. I mean, I'm actually a Google Pixel phone owner, but I use AirPods with them. And clearly we're hearing on the call that wearables had a very strong performance. AirPods, apparently the interest was off the charts, according to the CFO, and they're working hard to catch up with demand. They can still make it work on hardware when they want to.
Yeah, absolutely they can. I mean, you'd be a fool to rule Apple out of any of these businesses, right? I mean, in terms of hardware. So there's no question they're dominating the wearable market, whether that's AirPods, whether that's Apple Watch. I mean, they're owning basically the majority market share in both of those categories. So let's not overlook that, and clearly they're highlighting that, right? And I think as Julie sort of mentioned on that last segment right there, is that going into the service business, we all talk about this because that's a shift for the company, but it's not an easy play, right? They're going to have different competitors, people that have been investing in areas that maybe they haven't as significantly. So they've got challenges ahead, but it's not to say that anyone should actually rule them out by any means. And talking of other new sort of hit desires, it seems as though the Apple Card has been terrific thus far, is what Tim Cook has been saying on the call. And Apple Pay transactions as well, expected to top 10 billion by 2019. Julie, how much is the fintech angle of Apple overlooked or a future area of growth?
Yeah, so it appears to be a strong area of growth. I think the open question here is just one, like how much revenue will it continue to generate for them? I do believe that some of the early deals that they signed may have expired. They need to continue to grow their ecosystem, and it's got to be, if it's going to replace something like cash or a credit card, I have to be able to use it everywhere, and that includes like transportation systems and other places where I want to spend money, but I don't want to get, right? There's this recurring payment, but I don't want to get out a credit card or have a separate pass. So there's a lot of runway there for Apple, but it's also a slog. It's hard work.
It's hard work, it definitely is. And Ryan, in terms of, it's also hard work to recreate a juggernaut in hardware space to become a services business. Do you think thus far they are succeeding in their reorientation? And at what point will they ever become predominantly a services company?
Yeah, well, to the last part of the question, I don't know exactly when, and I think that's the million-dollar question, or yeah, I guess we could say trillion-dollar question, right, with everything that's going on today. But realistically, I mean, these guys aren't done with hardware by any means, right? So we're obviously, we haven't even talked about iPhone, which is the first, I think, earnings one of these types of briefings that I've been on where we haven't actually really dug into that. But it's, again, that's a product that's not done by any means, right? It's still holding 15% market share of, the entire segment and so forth. And it's going to still, make some revolutionary gains. But they have their challenges ahead. And again, it's changing times on both aspects, both the services and the hardware side. But
Ryan, to that end, the iPhone isn't done. But how do you see the price point maturing? Because we're seeing, interestingly, Samsung offering yet even more expensive phones with the foldable one, which has been a slight disaster in terms of its launching into the market. But on the downside, we are seeing, particularly in China, the likes of Huawei, the likes of Samsung eroding some of their market share. How much do you think that they need to go down the price point value chain, or is that never a good idea with Apple?
Well, I guess they're not going to go down to the areas where Huawei and Samsung and Xiaomi and all these others that they're playing really to support their market share, right? Apple's never going to go that low in terms of price point. I wouldn't be surprised, and this is just some speculation, if we do see another sort of go at it with a lower cost iPhone, but that's probably going to be into next year. And keep in mind, again, this is still the cash cow. They're not going to give up on this. They're looking at all the market dynamics, but as you sort of said, they can't go all the way down to the bottom. But I think that they're realizing that there is a market need for, whether that's a $500 to $600 iPhone or something like that. Who knows what the price point is, but probably something lower than the $1,000 plus stuff that we're seeing from traditional phones. And then obviously Samsung, as you mentioned, is getting into that $2,000 plus, and Huawei is going to follow pretty soon.
Julie Osk of Forrester and Ryan Reith from IDC. Coming up, how will politics shape tech in 2019 and into the presidential election? We will talk with Senator Marsha Blackburn about her view on big tech from Capitol Hill. And if you like Bloomberg News, you can check us out on the radio, listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Big tech platforms like Google and Facebook are facing the prospect of more regulation from lawmakers in the U.S. and abroad, amidst accusations of spreading fake news, hate, misinformation, and allowing their platforms to be weaponized by extremists. We spoke with U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee about the intersection of tech and politics in Washington.
What they're getting right is that they provide a service, an information service that people enjoy. And they have changed the way we conduct a lot of our transactional life. Many people will say that is for the better. However, when you look at their lack of privacy enforcement, and now, Emily, people are beginning to figure out, oh, they're data mining me, oh, they're tracking, oh, they're following. Oh, they are sending my information out, and they're big ad companies. And I don't like that. I want them to only access information that I give them explicit permission to see. I don't want them following me. And how is it that they can monetize my information, anonymize it, except back to their IP address, which is their virtual you, and then sell that information to the retailer? So people have a lot of questions about this business model, and it's why they're saying it is time for Congress to do something about privacy and data security in the virtual space.
So what should Congress do when it comes to privacy?
The Browser Act is my legislation, and that's kind of the benchmark, if you will, that people talk from and say, let's add to or let's take from the Browser Act. This would require an individual to give explicit permission, opt in for sensitive data sharing, opt out for non-sensitive information. It would be one set of privacy rules for the entire internet ecosystem and one regulator, the FTC, which is our nation's privacy regulator, both in the virtual and the physical space.
Do you think Europe and GDPR is a good model here?
I think that is, it reaches a little bit too far. It's a little bit too restrictive. And my preference is to see the internet remain a place where innovators can pop on and innovate. We have to bear in mind that the internet from 1995, no one ever thought about apps. They never thought about mobility in the sense that we have mobility now. They never thought about the convergence of voice, video, and data. And now you see that, and it's all on a handheld device. You take it with you everywhere you go. And we need to make certain that individuals that are going to use that spectrum as their backbone, that they have the ability to innovate, and we should not have laws that are restrictive that are going to limit new entrants into the marketplace.
Now, there have been growing concerns from conservatives about social media suppressing conservative views. President Trump just met with Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. Do you think social media is suppressing conservative views deliberately or undeliberately?
We've had some hearings on this, and of course they will say, no, we do not. But here's where I think you get into what many people think of as suppression or censorship, is the way they build the algorithms that are doing the data mining. And the question should be to Facebook and Twitter and these entities, do you subjectively manipulate your algorithm? And what we have to realize is in Silicon Valley, a lot of people have a more liberal bent. That is their preference. They bring that to work. They are engineering and building these algorithms, and then they probably tilt left instead of being down the middle, and we know they don't tilt right.
You actually had a pro-life ad in 2017 that was taken down by Twitter. They said it was inflammatory. They apologized. They reinstated it. What have your conversations been like with the executives of these companies? We know they're active. They're lobbying here on Capitol Hill. They want your support.
And when we did a hearing a couple of weeks ago, Twitter publicly apologized to me. But the question is, how do we get to a point that pro-life language is considered to be inflammatory? That's the underlying question. And why did they make a decision to block that, and then it took them a while through conversation to put it back up? And for all of our edge providers, this is the question that needs to be there. People want to know that if this is the new public square, then they are going to be able to express their opinions, and that the public square is going to be appropriately monitored or regulated to keep out violence, to keep out terrorism, to keep out those things that do not serve the public conversation well.
Let's talk about that. There was just another shooting at a synagogue in California, and some would argue that these platforms have done a lot to combat terrorism, to combat ISIS, but haven't done enough to combat white supremacy. What do you think?
You know, Emily, there is no place for hate speech, hatefulness, this kind of action on any of these platforms, and they're going to have to be diligent in making certain that they deal with those things. Likewise, many of us have spent a lot of time working on human trafficking and sex trafficking, working to shut down entities like Backpage, working to make certain that we tamp down any of the other entities that grow up. One investigator told me, you know, we stop Backpage, but then you have the mom and pops that come up. And this does not have a place. We want to make certain that everyone and their information is safe online, and we definitely want to make certain that our children are safe online.
Now, Senator Elizabeth Warren has been calling for a breakup of big tech companies, and she's gotten supports on both sides of the aisle. Do you think big tech companies, Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, do you think they need to be broken up?
What we need to do is make certain that they are responsible to the Americans that are using their platform, and also that they are not acting in a way that is not going to serve their consumers well. We don't want to make certain, we don't want an individual's private information to be made public. We want to make certain that data security provisions and breach notification provisions are in place. We want to make certain that individuals have the toolbox they need to protect their virtual you.
So then would you say breaking up big tech or antitrust regulation is a step too far?
I think that it is something that we're going to look at.
Okay.
I think that it is important for us first to say, here are the privacy rules of the road, because right now we don't have those. And here is the regulator you're going to be responsible to. And as someone who is a light touch regulator, I think that we need to do that first and foremost. Then we can move on and do some other things. We definitely have to look at the censorship issue. We have to work with these companies on that issue. And if they're going to consider themselves a news source, maybe they should hire a news director.
You've called net neutrality socialistic. What do you mean by that?
When you would put the government at the head of the pipe, if you will, that broadband pipe, and putting them in the first spot. And that we don't want to do. We don't want, the internet's not broken. It doesn't need the federal government to fix it, if you will. So what we would like to do is make certain that we preserve an open internet. We're all against no block, or against blocking. We're all against throttling. What we want to make certain is that before we make a decision on prioritization, that we are talking with innovators. When you talk with people that are working in AI or working on AVs or working in healthcare technology, they will say, let's move very slowly when we talk about prioritization, because we don't know what the next innovation is going to be and how we're going to utilize those technologies as 5G comes into the marketplace.
Now, you've been a staunch supporter of President Trump. We know that Senator Biden has just declared he is running, and he's kicked off his campaign by talking about Charlottesville, and there continues to be the contention that President Trump did not handle that situation well. Do you have any concern about Biden or any other Democratic opponent?
They're going to have their primary, and they are going to go through that primary. They will choose a nominee, and then we will have that race once they have chosen their nominee.
Now, you're the first woman senator from Tennessee. You supported the Kavanaugh nomination. I know that mobilized a number of your voters. How much progress do you think the Me Too movement has made, and how much progress do you think still needs to be made?
My hope is that the Me Too movement has helped this to be a conversation that moms and daughters and employers and employees have. And I think it's a good thing that our children and grandchildren are not going to be fearful to bring it up when they have had someone act inappropriately to them. I think that's a good, healthy thing.
Senator Marsha Blackburn there of Tennessee. Coming up, he is the man in charge of Microsoft's most lucrative business. We're going to speak with Scott Guthrie, Executive Vice President of Microsoft Cloud and AI. And later, the home to the world's tallest building also boasts the world's first minister for artificial intelligence. We'll ask him about his ambitious plans to make the United Arab Emirates the world's AI leader. This is Bloomberg. Outside of CEO Satya Nadella, Scott Guthrie is arguably the most important person at Microsoft. As the Executive Vice President of Microsoft's Cloud and AI group, he has helped the tech giant claim a top spot in the cloud, just behind Amazon. Ahead of the Microsoft Build Developer Conference next week, I caught up with Guthrie and talked about what lies ahead.
I've been fortunate to work with Satya for a long time, and he and I worked on Azure and the cloud business. And so when he became CEO, or the day before he became CEO, we had a conversation, and I took on what was his role.
What did he say?
Well, we've worked so closely together, so it was a pretty quick conversation. And, the company as a whole has been going through this cloud transformation. So it's been incredibly fun to be part of, and then more importantly, helping our customers through it. And it's been a great ride.
Yeah, in the break we were talking about 7 to 8 years ago, the Azure business didn't really exist. So it's a fairly new business, yet it has grown really fast. And you made a big decision a few years ago to focus on cloud, shift a lot of workers and resources there to this area that was making like millions of dollars from areas that were making billions of dollars. You're an engineer by training. How did you make that decision? What informed that?
Well, I think in technology, things move fast. And the most important thing is trying to understand where is the hockey puck going and how do you skate to it. And as a company, we'd missed a couple of trends, which is widely known. And we saw cloud and said, this is a trend we're not going to miss. And more than just a technology shift, we also see every customer out there is looking to reinvent themselves and do digital transformation, and cloud is integral. And I think we were able to execute very well. It aligns incredibly well with what customers are looking for. And it's been great to see the success both of their businesses, but then in turn with ours.
How do you compete with Amazon when they got a head start 4 years earlier in this business than you did?
Well, I think the thing that we focused on is how do we really focus on the enterprise market and the startups and ISVs that target the enterprise market. And I think that was something that we did early on, whereas Amazon had focused more to begin with consumer startups. And it's allowed us to play to our strengths around hybrid, which is a key differentiation we have versus other cloud competitors. And it also allows us to really look at the Microsoft overall cloud portfolio, which is not just Azure, but also Office 365 and Dynamics 365, and bring a really unique set of offerings to bear that Amazon and other cloud vendors don't have.
Now, are you taking business from them? Are you attracting customers that they have to your platform, or are you mostly winning new customers that are new to the cloud entirely?
We see both. I think we definitely have a number of very large customers that have switched to our cloud with Azure. And then, what we also see is just the market has been growing, and I think we're taking a disproportionate share of the growth, and that's been driving our overall cloud momentum. And the market is still fairly new, and it's not anywhere near over in terms of its growth phase. And so, the thing that we get energized around is just the tremendous opportunity that's ahead, not just, again, to grow our business, but more importantly, grow our customers' business as we enable them to do more and take advantage of the cloud to reinvent themselves.
So do you see the pie getting bigger? And if so, how much more of the pie will you have in the future, in terms of a percentage? If Amazon is many times bigger than you now, what does that look like in 2, 3, 5 years?
Well, I don't think Amazon's many times bigger than us now. Maybe 7 years ago they were, but now I think if you look in the enterprise market, most people have us pretty darn close in terms of overall cloud share for businesses. Again, we see the opportunity ahead as really enormous market, because everything is moving to cloud over time. Not just the traditional IT workloads, but cars, retail facilities, manufacturing, a bunch of technology that we never had any participation in terms of the core business is now really being cloud enabled, and I think enables an enormous market out there.
I know it's not a zero-sum game, but is this a market where you feel there will be one clear leader, or where there will be many leaders?
I think there'll be, I don't think there'll be one. I think there'll definitely be several. And it's probably $1 trillion market, so it's a very big market. And the thing that we're uniquely focused on is, how do we have this sort of unique value proposition that really makes our customers successful?
Coming up, Alphabet's first quarter revenue misses estimates as growth in ads slows, but the company points to strength in mobile search and the cloud. We'll break down results. And Bloomberg Tech live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Technology and follow our global breaking news network TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. Alphabet shares sliding this week following its first quarter results. Revenue missing analyst estimates, sparking concern that advertisers are shifting some spending to digital rivals. Sales came in at $29.5 billion, excluding payments to distribution partners. Wall Street was looking for $30 billion. Google is usually the first place consumers go when searching for new products, but that has changed with increasing competition from Amazon. Colin Colburn, analyst at Forrester Research, and Jitendra Wawal of Bloomberg Intelligence gave us their reaction.
17% growth is not horrible. Let's just put that out there first. Next is that the search ad market is maturing. This is something that Google's been after for 20 plus years now. So this is something that is at a point where there's just lots of advertisers who they're hitting a point of saturation, of diminishing marginal returns. And then I think the other thing that's happening here, as we mentioned, is that Amazon is now a much bigger part of the digital advertising ecosystem. So there's just greater competition than ever before. If you're looking at this as an optimist, you're saying to yourself, hey, Google's doing pretty well now that there's even more competition, the stiffer competition than ever before. If you're a pessimist, you're looking at this as, well, Amazon is dominating product search today. It's the #1 place that consumers go to research anything about retail products that they're purchasing, whether it's on Amazon or off Amazon. And Amazon is capturing a greater share of those search ad dollars from consumer goods or retailers that are selling on any of these marketplaces, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Walmart. So that to me is a little bit of a warning sign. And really, Amazon's just getting going with their ad business. Yeah, they didn't have the greatest quarter for their ad business, growing about 30% year on year when we were kind of used to 90+% year on year growth. But they're really just getting going, where most of the money is just coming from search advertising, and they have a lot of runway to go.
Now, they have been reining in some of their spending. We saw CapEx go down, falling to $4.6 billion from $7.3 billion last year. Also, I have a chart in my Bloomberg here which shows what's happening with margins. You can see margins getting slimmer over the last 3 quarters. Now, I did speak to Alphabet CFO earlier, just before the call got started. Speaking about the revenue miss, she blamed it on FX. She said the numbers reflect FX headwind, in contrast to a tailwind last year. She said the year-over-year growth rate also reflects our strong 2018, so a comparison off a strong base. Now, in response to the Amazon question, is Amazon becoming a bigger and bigger threat because more consumers are starting their searches directly on Amazon? She said, we continue to see people using search robustly across a wide variety of use cases, including shopping. She also talked about how much of ad budgets are still offline and how much of commerce is still offline. Jitendra, what do you think of those arguments?
Well, if you actually look at for this quarter, you mentioned currency, you mentioned comparisons. Basically, they're saying that there were product changes that affected last quarter, and that if tailwind is tapering. I mean, the way, if you look at their revenue growth over the last 3 years, really, you saw that they had changes for the product in mobile search and YouTube, and the growth accelerated. And now we're seeing a deceleration, especially in the paid click growth. Now, has competition really kicked in? We don't think that it has really kicked in yet, but it is a warning sign going forward for this year. But having said that, I think it's more of a function of this tailwind of all the product changes that were done in mobile search and YouTube sort of fading, so the expectations need to reflect that.
Colin Colburn of Forrester Research and Jitendra Wawal of Bloomberg Intelligence. Well, the United Arab Emirates is a country that prides itself on building big and being first, and that extends to the tech sector with the country's appointment of the world's first minister for artificial intelligence. Behind the ministry's creation is the Emirates' lofty ambition to be the global leader in AI, and for that commitment to boost the UAE's GDP by 35% by 2031. Bloomberg's Manus Cranny spoke with His Excellency Omar bin Sultan Al Olama from the first AI Everything conference in Dubai about the nation's AI strategy and how it has changed the economy.
Let's not talk about businesses that are starting, let's talk about proven businesses. So some of our most successful exits so far are artificial intelligence stories of success. Kareem is an artificial intelligence company that got acquired for 11 billion dirhams, 3.1 or 3.2 billion dollars. Souk.com got acquired by Amazon for more than 2 billion dirhams, and Media.net got acquired for more than 3 billion dirhams. These are all artificial intelligence companies in their core, and these are probably they're proof that our leadership has been working on this for years. We have created the right ecosystem, we have attracted the right talent, and today these success stories are coming out.
Do you think that Careem and Souk.com, do you think that those businesses act as an inspiration for the next generation of Emiratis to give it a go for themselves in AI and evolve?
Definitely, and it also proves that there is something to be got out of it. We're not doing AI for the sake of AI. We're doing AI because it's something that creates value, and there are returns that make it tangible and feasible as well to do.
From an economic and an employment aspect, there is also that thought in the back of everybody's mind, AI will reduce the employment opportunities. How do you manage that perception?
So every single technological innovation, every single advancement has cost jobs, whether that's one job or 100,000 jobs. The job of governments is to do one of two things: upskill people that will lose their jobs and ensure that people don't go into jobs that are going to be lost. So this is what we are doing here. We are mapping out all the jobs that we are graduating people in, all the jobs that are going to be lost, and then either upskilling these people into other jobs or making sure that we don't have graduates going into fields that are going to be lost.
We have a smart city. Dubai is known around the world for that brand. How will AI, how will your ministry play into the smart city evolution?
The idea is we want to become the smartest city. Through AI, we want to make sure that all decision making is done in a very efficient manner, in a timely manner, and the right decisions are being made. Because a wrong decision can cost billions. A wrong decision can really impact people's lives negatively. So that's the first thing. The second is we want the government here to be proactive in delivering services. We want the government here to tailor services to the needs of the citizen or the resident or the tourist of the UAE.
And is the government prepared to be experimental with AI in the delivery?
We already are. So we launched something called the Reg Lab recently, which is a lab that changes the regulations for 6-month periods, where we are able to put a regulation for six months, see the impact of the technology while we do the proof of concept in a controlled environment, and then if it is good, we expand that and make it into law. So we are trying to experiment already, and we're becoming a test bed for the world in the UAE. They're coming from around the world and implementing it in the UAE.
That was Omar bin Sultan Al Olama, Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence in the UAE. Coming up, Facebook wants to be your go-to place for messaging. What the social network unveiled to make that a reality at its annual F8 conference next. This is Bloomberg. Facebook is doubling down on a successful but controversial part of its namesake app, messaging. On Tuesday, the social network unveiled a redesign that focuses on its groups feature, another sign that Facebook is moving toward more private and intimate communication. Here's Mark Zuckerberg discussing one of its newest additions to messaging.
We need to make sure that the service is available everywhere that you are. And for a modern messaging experience, that means having a great desktop experience. So we've built a great new desktop app, so you're going to be able to chat and video chat in a native app, not just the browser. And we are launching this on both Mac and Windows. And this is one of our top most requested features.
Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde caught up with Stan Chudnovsky, VP of Facebook Messenger at the F8 conference in San Jose.
We announced desktop app, and you just played that clip. We also announced ability to actually watch videos while you're in a group video chat with other friends of yours. We also announced the thing that we are going to be rolling out later this year called Friends tab, where all of your close communications with friends and family are going to go to, and you will be able to have status, you will be able to have stories, all of that's going to be right there. So we're kind of been busy during the last year redesigning our app, and we're going to continue to be busy going forward. One thing also to say about the privacy part of that, we're just looking forward to be even more private than we ever have been before, with end-to-end encryption and working with stakeholders all over the world about figuring out the right ways of doing it and rolling it out eventually to our users worldwide, as well as interoperability, when you will be able to actually send messages from WhatsApp to Messenger and back and forth.
When will that be a reality, do you think, Stan?
Could you repeat the question, please?
When do you think the interoperability between WhatsApp and Messenger will actually be a reality?
That's actually going to be years. And the reason why it's going to be years is just because it's going to take us a long time to figure out the way to do it right. When it comes down to encryption, we need to figure out a way to do it right. That will require us to consult with many different constituencies out there. Safety advocates, privacy advocates, governments, policymakers. That's going to take time to get it right. We don't have all the answers right now, but once we do, then we will be able to spec it out, and then we're going to be able to have the timelines.
Okay, so years for that particular merging. What about what is available right here, right now, in terms of business and the person? You talk a lot about how Messenger is being used within families, within friendship groups, but it looks as though you're focusing squarely at the enterprise as well. How are you looking to make money off of that?
So we're definitely very excited about our business ecosystems that is emerging around Messenger. Today we have 20 billion messages that are being sent between people and businesses every month. And what excites me personally the most is actually not the number, but the trajectory. A couple of years ago when we announced our first number, it was 2 billion, and then we said 4, and then we said 6. Just 6 months ago, I think in December, I was in New York, and I announced that now we have 10 billion, and today we are at 20. So the speed of growth there is very fast, and one of the reasons for that is just simple fact that people want to message to businesses. They want to communicate with businesses the same way. They're communicating with other friends, and so they don't call necessarily anymore. They don't necessarily prefer emails. They prefer messaging. We are pretty certain that if we are continuing... Go ahead.
Will you charge businesses for this?
Could you repeat the question?
Will you
Sorry,
charge businesses for this? Would you charge them? How would this earn you money?
Yeah. So the way we would charge is that through ads. We are in ads business, and today one of the fastest growing products actually at Facebook is click to Messenger ads. And the way that works is that it's a simple ad, but the call to action for people is message. Once you tap on that, it opens up a thread between person and the business, and then business can have that channel of communication with their customers. For that, you definitely have to pay because you are buying an ad, and that's how we are making money today.
Interesting. Would you look to make money in different ways going forward from Messenger? What are the ways in which that you can really make the most of being so integrated between the customer and the enterprise?
Well, the way we are thinking about it is that we need to focus for now more on two things. One, building products that people really love and enjoy using, and second, building that business ecosystem where we enable people to talk to businesses and continue to grow that ecosystem. Once we figure these two things out and do that very well, we are pretty confident there's going to be plenty of ways for us to make money. But Facebook Mojo always was about building products for people first before go deeper, and that's what we're going to do.
Talking about building products, a few years ago at F8, the big talking point was bots, how that was going to be integrated within Messenger, how they were going to help. How are bots helping today? Are they being rolled out in the way that was originally envisaged?
We are excited about automation, and what we are experiencing right now are the experiences where people are sort of combining automated messages that are enabled by bots and human messages that are enabled by real people. And the most powerful experiences on Messenger today are those combinations when you start a conversation with the bot, but once bot sort of runs to the end of its depth, then the person picks up the conversation, and then it can handle it even better than bot ever could. So those are experiences that are actually really enabling the growth of the platform today, and we are excited about them going into the future as well.
That's Stan Chudnovsky, Facebook Messenger VP. Coming up, Udacity co-founder Sebastian Thrun joins us to discuss the new scholarship they are rolling out with Facebook to expand education for deep learning and AI specifically tied to privacy. This is Bloomberg. For Udacity has been helping students learn the skills needed in the next wave of tech disciplines, including AI, deep learning, and VR. And as demand for privacy and security-focused tools grows, there's an opportunity for new talent. Udacity is partnering with Facebook now on a new scholarship for education on privacy and encryption. Udacity co-founder Sebastian Thrun joined us Wednesday to discuss.
There's a new program we have for people and companies that care about privacy and security in the AI space. It's actually quite interesting. When you do machine learning, you get all this data in, and there's always a chance that your data gets compromised somehow. And there's now new methods that can train a machine to learn without even understanding the raw data. It sounds magical, but it adds massive amounts of security to any machine learning approach.
So it's interesting that you're announcing this in partnership with Facebook. Facebook is backing 5,000
Yes, yeah, 5,000 scholarships.
Here. And Facebook is notoriously not focused on privacy, but this is part of their new mission.
Yeah, exactly.
Why Facebook?
I mean, we work with Facebook, with Google, with Amazon, with pretty much anybody in this field. And privacy is a universal concern. It doesn't mean we always get it right here in Silicon Valley, but everybody cares.
And how would you describe the pool of talent who can, focus on, who have the expertise on privacy and security related issues? I mean, is there just not enough people to satisfy demand?
There is almost nobody right now. It's a very new topic. You might think it's really old, but with the level of cyber attacks going up every week, every month by state actors and so on, the sophistication of the defenses have to go up as well. And very few companies are good at this. What we do at Udacity, we train people. We train people with the latest skills. This is an Oxford PhD student built it with us, and DeepMind, Google's company, funded eventually by Facebook scholarships. But we really build the latest and best so that any person on the planet can now become a privacy expert.
So when you say there's almost nobody right now, could we be worried about our privacy and how well we're being protected at this moment by the current generation of technologists?
And we're learning about it every single day. We're learning about programs that Google and others do together with governments and so on. I think this is something as technology progresses, there's always a good use and a bad use, and we have to defend ourselves against bad users and learn how to really focus on the good users.
So you announced this at Facebook's Mobile Developers Conference, F8. And it obviously works well with Mark Zuckerberg's new strategy going forward to be more privacy focused. He made a joke yesterday that fell a little flat. Let's take a listen to that.
Now look, I get that a lot of people aren't sure that we're serious about this. I know that we don't exactly have the strongest reputation on privacy right now, to put it lightly.
So there was a slightly awkward pause there because, well, that's an understatement. Do you think this strategy can really get Facebook back on track or improve its reputation?
I do believe in Silicon Valley at large, and not single any company, we need to take these issues super seriously. And it starts with training. It starts with technology training, with people getting the right skills to bring this to the workforce. I would say, being a technologist myself, it's been amazing what happened in the last 10 years. We have the genie out of the bottle. All of a sudden we do something and we reach 1 billion people. What is lacking is the responsible, ethical, and technical training that makes this all secure.
Is it just the technical expertise that's missing, or is it also the values? Because it almost seems like values haven't caught up with what people now want.
I think we have to have a very broad discussion across the entire nation what we want and what we stand for as Americans, and as me as a wannabe and now actual American, as a pesky immigrant, as you say. And we have to really have a dialogue that goes all the way to Washington and everybody to see what is right for us. And that dialogue is now beginning. I see Udacity actually playing a big role in this because we teach people. We have now 75,000 graduates. We have over 10 million students. We teach people all across the nation, and we can bring those values to anybody in the tech field.
So give us an update on the latest at Udacity. How many nano degrees have you awarded?
Yeah.
And tell us about all of the disciplines. I know there's been some restructuring and reorganization, and you're in a new phase.
We love it. We've awarded something like 86,000 or so nano degrees, 75,000 graduates. Most of them find jobs in places like Google and Facebook, but also AT&T, many companies. And what I'm most excited about is I think we're now beginning to really invent a new degree. The nano degree is becoming what we call the fourth degree. It's like an industry accepted credential from top companies. as a way to recruit and certify people who want to be lifelong learners, who don't want to be done with learning after college, but want to continue brushing up their tech skills. And that to me is great, because it means we can really transform the entire American workforce into one where people continue to learn, get these new skills, get new job opportunities, make more money, and have a better life.
Now, you wear a lot of hats. You're also the CEO of Kitty Hawk, your self-flying car company, or just flying car company. Give us the latest on where Kitty Hawk is today. Where's that flying car? When can I ride
I think you were the first person ever driving the first journalist ever driving the Google self-driving car many years ago.
Yes,
I remember
with
this.
you.
And it looked like a crazy idea. The same way the flying car looks crazy. We've done in the order of 22,000 test flights. We built over 100 of those. And we're still in the development phase. It's not safe enough yet to really unleash to the people, but we have this vision. We believe we can get you from downtown San Francisco to Berkeley in 3 minutes, or from San Francisco to Palo Alto in 15.
So how does your vision incorporate what's already out there? You know, of course, we've got ride sharing, you've got Uber working on flying taxis. There are many different theories about what the roads and the skies are going to look like. What's yours?
So I worked on self-driving cars for a long time. I started the Waymo team, obviously.
Yes,
so I have a long history.
You're the inventor of the self-driving car. Literally, we always have to get all of your accomplishments
Sorry.
into every interview.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But for a long time, I really believed that the self-driving car would be the panacea, the thing that solves all traffic problems, because we kill 1.2 million people every year in traffic accidents in the world. And then I realized, together with my partner Larry Page, if you just go like 300-400 feet up, there's almost nothing to hit. There's no kids running around, no bicycles, no curbs, no whatever you care about doesn't exist. And while there's a new problem now how to manage traffic up there, you can now build systems that are so quiet you won't even notice them. So for me, if I'm a futurist, a visionary, I believe it's inevitable at some point that we will daily, in a daily commute, go up in the air. And when that happens, it'll be the end of traffic.
When? When does that happen?
That's the $10,000 question. Not today. And I hope we're going to have something on the market in the next like 3-4 years.
So you mentioned Larry Page. Obviously, you went on to found Google X. Google still working on self-driving cars. So is Uber. So is Tesla. Who owns this market? Will it always be many different players? Do you think one or two will pull ahead?
That's a great question, and the market is still very open. I mean, people always believe Waymo has kind of won, but we have to remind ourselves, none of the companies have rolled out a big business. In fact, the most successful today is Tesla. Tesla actually has rolled out a real autopilot, which has self-driving car features. I believe on the ground, there'll be 1 or 2 companies that will own the market. And the reason is the same logic by which ride-sharing is owned by 2 companies in the States, not by 50. You get this network effect. The more cars you operate, the shorter it is for you to get one, and the better the user experience. So there's a natural, just like Facebook has a network effect among your friends, and a natural network effect among self-driving cars.
So which 2 companies?
If I were to invest today, I would definitely invest in Waymo, and the second one I would think for a long time.
Okay, not Tesla necessarily.
I think, look, boy, I'm not an analyst. I am impressed by what Tesla has been doing, and I use a Tesla every day, and I love the autopilot feature. But I think it's a long shot from an autopilot all the way to city driving without a driver inside. And that's where I believe Waymo right now has the leading edge.
Udacity co-founder Sebastian Thrun. And that does it for this edition of the Best of Bloomberg Technology. We will bring you all the latest in tech throughout the week. Tune in every day, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco, and we're live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology. Follow our global breaking news network TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg.